croeso cynnes i chi i sesiwn sir Gâr Greadigol wsos yma. Yn gwmni fi heddiw mae Toby Townrow o gwmni Drone Revolution. Mae croeso i chi hefyd ymuno yn y sgwrsio wrth adael cwestiwn yn y bocs cwestiwn sydd ar wilod y sgrin. A warm welcome to you to Sir Gâr Greadigol this week. Today we have Toby Townrow from Drone Revolution keeping us company. Remember, if you have a question, to pop it at the bottom of the screen. Thank you very much for your time today, Toby. I really do appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
So tell us about Drone Revolution. How did it start and why?
So, yeah, we're a commercial drones services and products company. We started really, my two co-directors, John Young and Clayton Ernie, we got together by chance, really. They both worked for a facilities management company. They'd been working with some security companies, and they'd said, well, these drones are all very well, but don't stay up in the air that long and that kind of stuff. So we had they had some ideas for a product that stayed up in the air for longer, and we'll talk about that later, I expect. But in the meantime, then, when I was working as a self-employed consultant, and I met John particularly. I was delivering a course for the company that John worked for, and he was the only other Welsh guy on the course, so of course we got talking. You know, he mentioned that he was thinking about starting this business, but he didn't really know much about starting a business. I'd worked with Welsh Ice in Caerphilly, which is on their accelerator program, so I knew a little bit about investment landscape in Cardiff and surrounding areas, and what we could potentially do. So we had the idea of having a service business that supported the development of our products. And that's kind of when it all got born. So that was, we started talking, I think, January 2018. By October, we pretty much won the investment, and we're in our premises, ready to start sort of 1st November 2018. So we've been there in Caerphilly ever since. And the vision for the business is really around driving improvements in safety and security. So on the product side, it's more about the security, and on the drone side, on the services side, it's about safety, because the thing around inspections working at height, about 40 people still die every year in the UK working at height. You know, it's a big problem. And for an inspection now, you don't actually need to go up there. You can just look at it from above with the drone. And so far, you know, drones haven't injured or killed anyone. So for us, it's a bit of a no-brainer. It's also quicker and cheaper than the traditional methods of working at height, which would be either a ladder. Mostly, though, in industry, it would be scaffolding, or it would be an electronic work platform of some kind. You know, those are expensive, and you know, scaffolding stays up for ages, takes a long time to put up and take down, and it costs a lot of money. So now, you know, we can see we've been doing that for a few years, and we're getting clients now understanding this, that not only is it safer, but it's cheaper and quicker. So why wouldn't you? So yeah, our mantra, our vision for the business is about making organisations better, keeping people safer at the same time. That's what we.
So we see a lot of drones these days. Do you think that's a good or a bad thing? How do we make sure that people are using them safely?
Yeah, and the vast majority of time people are using them safely, and obviously you've got to distinguish between the professional use, whether that's for filming and you know, the creative industries, and there's an awful lot of drone footage in most TV shows. You watch it. I bore my wife rigid. I've stopped doing it now, but so the first 6 months are drone shot. You can tell all the time. But and people who are doing it for a hobby, you know, might buy one from you know, electrical store of some kind, and you know, and fly around the parks and so on. You know, the best place for people to fly them recreationally is either farmland where they've got permission. We know a farmer in Caerphilly who lets people fly their drones. You know, and you know, they're normally, or certainly the one in Caerphilly, is nestled in a fairly spectacular looking area. So you get some great pictures and shots and stuff. You know, public parks you can fly in, but it does depend on the local authority and what their rules are and so on. But yeah, ultimately, yeah, it's a great thing, because you know, I think people can start to understand how they can be used to, as I said, to keep people safer and to do things in a better way. You can get some great footage and photos and stuff. Like any technology or any tool, it can be used for ill. There's still some debate about whether there was a drone at Gatwick, but if we assume that there was a drone at Gatwick, you know, somebody was obviously messing about there and causing massive problems. You know, but there are tools in place, there are laws in place to stop that sort of thing, just there is with a phone or a car. You know, people can use them, you know, badly if they want to. So it's really about sort of, you know, less about the drone itself and more about the people using it, really.
Yeah. So what drones do you use for your work at the Drone Evolution? So
for the most part, we use what we call kind of enterprise level drones. So for anyone watching who knows anything about drones, we use the DJI range quite a bit. DJI are probably I would say they're the Sony of drones, but Sony haven't really got the market dominance. That doesn't really cover it. DJI have got about 85% to 90% of the market in terms of consumer and prosumer drones. Although there are some new entrants coming in, ironically one being Sony. We use their Matrice M210 and M300 range, which are kind of the first enterprise drones that they do. And the reason we use those is there's a greater range of cameras available. So we like to be able to stay away from an asset and view it quite close up. So we've got 30 times, 20 times and 30 times zoom cameras. So we can get right close in. So we do building inspections, for example. So we could be, the other day we were doing an inspection of Chepstow police station, for example, right? So we're in their car park, filming at a good height, so you know, over 50 meters away, but able to zoom in on and find holes and cracks in the roof space, which is why we were there. So all of that kind of stuff is really important to be able to understand. Okay, what drone am I using? Well, the first thing is, what do you need to use it for? So if you are a hobbyist and you know something like a DJI Mavic or a Parrot and Nafi, there's smaller drones available, but they've got great cameras, 4K. Some of them have got small zooms on them, but you know they're not particularly expensive, and they're brilliant for that kind of creative stuff. You know, they can go at quite good speeds as well, so you can get, you know, very sort of fast shots and that kind of stuff. For the stuff we do, that kind of the more kind of, I wouldn't say boring, but the more kind of industry-led stuff would be a better way of doing it. Building inspections, roof inspections, that kind of stuff. You know, that ability to zoom in is from a distance is important, because you want to make sure you're maintaining some distance away from the asset. You're also at a height that you're able to work, because there are limits around how many meters you need to be away from certain things. So for example, if you want to work within 50 meters of a railway line, you normally have to inform Network Rail, for example, or the TFW as well. You know, you have to make sure that you're away from people and all that kind of thing. So finding the right takeoff and landing spot, all that kind of stuff is important. But the ability to zoom in is really helpful.
Fab, thank you. So why is drone the way forward in the content of inspecting a property or an area of land? I know you've touched on it.
Yeah, I think, well, the thing is that it can, as I said, it can get the work done cheaply, very quickly, but also very safely. The technology is getting better all the time, so you can get some really good, accurate data. So that's really useful for example, for topography surveys. So, you know, if you want to go and survey a bit of land, you know, we regularly do all sorts of different kind of inspections for different things, but one of the ones we do quite a lot at the moment is coal tip inspections. So right across South Wales and the valleys, so you know, Merthyr, RCT and places like that, Caerphilly, we survey coal tips. And so to get that kind of data, the local authorities haven't really had that data before. They've generally had ordnance survey maps. They haven't really had too many pictures or anything. So now we're able to take a massive, great big picture and orthomosaic. So lots and lots and lots of pictures all joined together, which you can zoom right in on. And then from that, it can also create a 3D model of it. So they can examine all the exit and entrance points. They can have a look and see whether there's been any movement from one year to the next. Never had that kind of data before. So it's that kind of ability to be able to provide that kind of data that's really kind of transforming those kind of inspections and driving the use of new technology at a rate really that isn't hugely expensive. You know, if you were going to get that done by a qualified surveyor with ground points and ground technology, it would probably cost quite a bit more. So whilst there is also still a place for that ground level survey, what you're finding on construction sites as well quite often, or you know, heritage sites, is that there's a mixture of ground level and drone survey. So they kind of work in harmony to create super accurate models as well. So there are all sorts of different use cases. We survey mobile phone masts right across the UK, roof inspections, construction sites. We do spoil tip surveys as well. So if there's a big mound of earth, we can tell you roughly how much square meters or square footage is in that mound of earth, which is useful information for those companies when it comes to getting it taken away and all that kind of stuff as well. So.
Fab. So on the flip side of that, really, why is being creative important to you guys as a company as well?
So from our point of view, sometimes it's around solutions to problems, to challenges. So, often we get asked, can the drone do this? And sometimes the answer is not obvious, and sometimes we might have to work it out. So at the moment, we're working on a method to look at telegraph poles and to see whether we can spot rot and things like that, earlier on, and we're working through that. So the creativity there lies not necessarily in the end product, like you've got a lovely finished video and edited video, and there are don't get me wrong, there's lots and lots of companies who do amazing drone footage and filming for TV shows and so on. We're not really in that market as much, but that creativity is around about how can I use my creativity to get over some of these challenges and these problems, and then apply them to, so you're taking creativity and making it innovation, and that's that kind of path from one to the next, and that's really important to us, and that's hugely important on our product side. As our technical director John, he's an electrical engineer by trade really, and his creativity is incredible, but it's not. He hasn't made a piece of art, He hasn't written a book, he hasn't made any music. He's created like brand new products that didn't exist in the marketplace, and that's huge for us, because that's going to differentiate us from other businesses, and that's a global thing then that becomes around the world on our product set. So that's why creativity is hugely important. And I encourage everybody really who might be watching this or is thinking about how they would use creativity away from some of those industries, to think about the people who built bridges and design electronics. It might appear that they're not creative, but actually they're endlessly creative. One of the things that I used to do an exercise that was taught on a creativity session a long time ago, which I thought was really insightful, was we were talking about left brain, right brain. So this kind of idea that the right brain is endlessly creative and the left brain is dominant, but that's all about organisation and stuff like that. And so you put people up and say, okay, Mozart, was he left brain or right brain dominant? And most people would say right brain, because he was endlessly creative and making music. It's like, well, actually it's probably a balance between the two, because you have to organise stuff, you have to write music, and that's a straight-jacketed notational thing. So it's not necessarily just about creativity, it's also about being able to then put that down on something, on paper, in a format that people can get and then hear it. And it's the same with this. You can say, well, what if we did this? And people will go, yeah, okay, well, I can take that and I can make it into something. I hope that makes some kind of sense. But
interesting, really interesting. Thank you. So Skywire, tell us about the Skywire.
Yeah, so that's our main product that we've created, and that is what's called a tethered drone. So a tethered drone stays up in the air for hours, and it's powered from the ground via a wire. So it's a bit like running your laptop off the mains, or running your phone off the mains. But effectively, it's keeping the drone up in the air for extended periods of time. Now, it can't necessarily fly and off in lots of different directions, but it's a different mindset in terms of, and this is where we talk about creativity, it's about thinking differently about stuff and turning stuff on its head. We're keeping the drone up in the air. It's not necessarily moving around, but actually that's really useful for a lot of security applications, for defence and military applications, and things like highways monitoring. So you can count traffic. So you align the video footage to the right software, and it can tell you how many motorbikes went through that roundabout, how many trucks, how many cars, and so on. So there's lots of applications for that kind of technology. There are other rival systems out there, but ours is completely unique because it's the only one that can be actually powered directly from a vehicle. So you're basically taking 12 volt or 24 volt power directly from a vehicle and then turning it into 400 volts to power the drone.
Wow, okay.
So, and we can take it up to 120 meters, which is your kind of legal ceiling limit. So we've achieved that, and there's very few, if any, companies that have achieved that before as well. So there's a lot of there's been a lot of experimentation, a lot of creativity around how to build that product in the first place. A lot of driving other people to make the stuff for us, and we were told early doors when we were going in investment. We actually had somebody come in and say, well, what you're saying can't happen, that can't work. And this person was a professor at a university involved in drones, and he said, well, no, it won't work. No, you can't tether that won't work. And 6 months later, we had our first working prototype, and that was quite satisfying.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah. Fab. So if we have someone out there now that has got a drone or interested in flying a drone, are they able to reach out to you for help with with health and safety and things? Or
I think please feel free to get in touch. I think the thing to remember for things like health and safety and stuff, for what we do specifically and on the service side, there's a lot of stuff around the administration. So getting a pilot, it sounds easy, doesn't it? I'll rock up with my drone and I'll fly a mast, and then I'll go to the next site. It's not as simple as that, like a lot of these things. So I think that's the thing to be borne in mind. Yeah, you have to have, every flight has to have its own method, what's it called? Sorry, risk management method statement, and risk assessments. All that has to be borne in mind. Any permissions have to be sought. Lots of different things. So we have an administrator who does that, so that our pilots can concentrate on flying. So, but everything is written down. If they've got queries, they can see it. All the contact details are there. For the site owner, for example, you might have to make sure you've got permission to take off from where you're going to take off from, all that kind of stuff. So, that stuff is quite complex. Having said that, if you want to fly a drone and get some great footage, particularly in the Welsh Hills, it's very simple and it's relatively straightforward. But people can reach out to us. There's plenty of advice on the Civil Aviation Authority website as well, which is a good resource to go to. Anybody buying a drone has to pass a test now, as of I think it was November last year. It's an online test. It's multiple choice. It's really not hard, but it gives you. But by doing that, it gives you a grounding of the safety stuff that you have to go through and the things don't fly near people's heads and that kind of stuff.
Fab, thank you. I'm going into my last question now, so if anyone has any questions for Toby, now is your chance to pop them in the question box. Dwi rwan yn mynd at yng nghwestiwn olaf efo Toby, felly os oes gan rhywun gwestiwn, wwan ydych cyfle chi I roed o yn y bocs cwestiwn ag atab ar wilod y sgrin. So my last question really, I was looking on your website, and as a business you offer help to other businesses with creating a virtual tour of their workplace. How does that kind of thing work then?
So when we were starting to do 3D models of buildings, we were kind of like, okay, we were doing the outside, can we do the inside as well? And it's also quite helpful from a business point of view because it means we can do some things in the rain, because when drones aren't necessarily that healthy in the rain, although a later model we started using you can use in the wet. But so we were thinking, well, it's almost like having the whole building then. So you've got the outside and the inside. And it's a different camera, so it's not a drone, it's on a panoramic camera, and it effectively stitches photos together and creates a Google Street View style virtual tour of a building. So if we were going to do this building, you'd be able to virtually walk from this room into the foyer and go past the cafe, and you'd be able to orientate yourself. Really useful tool for marketing, for selling property, commercial or otherwise. And I've seen a few estate agents are using these now to sell property on the open market. But equally for things like hospitals, for example, trying to people orientate themselves before they actually get to the hospital to kind of remove that anxiety of getting to hospital and not knowing where you're going. That kind of stuff's quite important, I think, and particularly post-COVID. So we worked with a construction company called ISG on Ysgol Bro Morgannwg down in Barry, that was really useful for the client to be able to see the progress of the extension. So they were putting in a new 4G pitch and a new sports hall and loads of new classrooms and stuff. So we did a whole scan of that whilst it was still in progress so that they could see the progress but without having to visit the site. And that was at the height of the pandemic. So nobody had to go there. So for social distancing, that was great, but also just for not having to go through the whole health and safety stuff, and we'd be wearing hard hats and all the rest of it. And then all the pupils and the parents could see what was happening as well. So it really made it come to life, and then we did it again when it was finished, and so on. So that was a great project to work on for that, and it shows the power of those kind of virtual tours as well.
Yeah, sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you. We have one question that's come through. So what are the next steps for the company?
Great question. Next step for the company, we are just on the cusp of actually starting to sell the product now. So we're working with a couple of drone manufacturers in Germany. There was one called Unique. That's the European headquarters in Germany. We're working with them to actually start selling the tethered systems. So they are, we've just sold our first actually this last week. So we're on the brink of that. So they're working with the police and the fire brigade in Berlin and in Hamburg. So we expect to see some of our systems there in the next few months as we get them built. So that'll be really exciting to actually get them now out into people's hands. We are also evolving some stuff around green energy. So we're looking at renewables, mainly because of the power supply that we've got. So what we're able to do of the power supply that we created, we're able to do, in theory, we're just on the cusp of testing all of this, is actually run the tethered drone from solar panels.
Oh, wow.
Or from wind turbines and things like that. Yeah. So, obviously it's weather dependent. It'll work in some territories longer than here. Yeah. But there's some other stuff we're looking at in that regard as well. We're just looking at some rail options as well. So looking at embedding some of those tethered drones in infrastructure. So for example, for points inspections for train tracks, as an example. So we're just in some discussions around that at the moment. So yeah, there's some really
a lot of stuff and a lot of exciting stuff. Brilliant. Thank you very much for your time. It's been really interesting. I've really enjoyed talking to you. Diolch yn fawr iawn I chi gyd am ymuno. Thank you very much for joining us. Wythnos nesa, da ni'n cael cwmni dau butcher o Cwmni Orchard. Next week, we'll have dau butcher here from Orchard. Gobeithio eich gweld chi wythnos nesa. Looking forward to seeing you next week. Diolch yn fawr iawn a mwynhewch eich penwythnos.